Well, first of all, let me welcome Jeanne-Marie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for
Yes.
being the first speaker live at the conference. It's an
It's
honor.
fun.
I
Yes.
don't know how many times you have been a speaker at this conference, maybe since the beginning, since the first one or a second one. So thank you for being here. Thank you for accepting again. Thank you for making the time, even though it was complicated.
It's quite all right. I'm honored to be here, very excited and very excited that this is, the eighth year that you do this, and it's just so amazing. And just like you, I love seeing all the different countries that are joining us. I just saw Algeria. I used to live in Algeria as a child, so it's like, oh, nice. There's people from everywhere. So wonderful. And just thank you for always putting out these amazing conferences where you get us to share our passion and share with the world the beauty of Montessori. So wonderful.
Thank you. I will say a few words about you, and I hope that
Uh-oh.
you will maybe, add something that I forget because I'm sure that I will not be saying everything. You are a parenting mentor. You are a Montessori at home and school consultant, and you are a birth doula. You support parents from the beginning, from the pregnancy until the children are older, which to me it feels amazing. You are the host of Art of Parenting podcast. You are
Mhm.
the founder of Your Parenting Mentor. You combine all of your passions together that, from Montessori, RIE, conscious parenting, positive discipline, mindfulness,
Mm,
that makes an amazing package to get sources from.
mm,
You also told me now that you support a local nonprofit organization called Thrive Wellness Collective. And yeah, tell us something more. Tell us something that we maybe haven't seen in your bio.
Well, I think most importantly, I'm a parent myself. I have two young adults now, which is quite amazing, this parenting journey, right? I have a 28-year-old and a 24-year-old. And you said birth doula, which is something that I'm very focused in these days, as well as postpartum doula. So prenatal, the birth itself, and then really caring for the mother afterwards, right? We tend to think that birth is just it and then off we go, but there's a lot to be done afterwards to make sure that bonding happens and so forth. And then Thrive Wellness Collective, the nonprofit you mentioned, is something that's very dear to my heart. It's a very small local nonprofit that basically subsidizes out of hospital births and also just midwifery care. Even if you've had a hospital birth, will come and visit you at home. They subsidize some doulas, some maternal mental health care, just everything around birth and caring for the birthing person. So it's something um, that is very dear to my heart and that I've been focused on. So yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Today, we are supposed to talk about becoming a Montessori parent from pregnancy to toddlerhood. So, probably I will just give you space to open the topic. And in the meantime, I would love to encourage everyone already now to ask your questions that you have because these live Zoom sessions are here to answer your questions. So use this opportunity, ask your questions in the chat so we will have time to answer them. I will keep the time limited to 1 hour because we are meeting with Tim Selden in 1 hour and a half. So at least we have, little time to go to the bathroom, drink a tea or
Sure,
something.
sure.
And so I will be limiting it to more or less 60 minutes. So please share your questions in the
Okay.
chat. At least they might be regarding this topic a little bit. And I give you space now. You can open the topic and we will see what happens.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for being here. So again, I am Jeanne-Marie Paynel, and what I think, Lucy introduced me of all sorts of things, but I think the essence is that I'm here to really answer your questions, to share a bit about what I'm doing these days, what I've discovered, and so forth. But it's really, this is a Q&A. So these are our wonderful sessions that are here for you. So anything parenting, Montessori, even positive discipline um, related. I am a Montessori, trained AMI guide from birth to six, so anything there and so forth. But first, I wanted to just share a little bit about the kind of the work that I do, but more in the optic of Montessori and how I think today, I think it's becoming more open, but for a long time, I think people thought Montessori was just for preschoolers, right? It's just for little people before they go to maybe more conventional schools. We now know, and thanks to Lucy and these wonderful, conferences, is that really, Montessori is from conception to adolescence, right? We have programs that go into our for our teenagers. So it's really from birth to teenagers. And today I want to focus on kind of those early years, those first 3 years, but more importantly, that first year and birth and so forth. So I work a lot with parents as a birth doula, and I incorporate what we were taught in our training as the birth to three training, right? Which is a training that was developed by Dr. Montessori, but mostly Dr. Montanaro, who was a pediatrician in Italy, came to the United States and did the first course that we call Assistance to Infancy. And that is where I discovered the immense potential in the information that we can share to parents, right? Because in that training, we do go through what happens in prenatal life, the birth, and what happens right after birth. And that's where I really kind of was like, oh, this is what I want to focus on. And the beauty of that also is that, as you know, as Montessorians, we are trained to observe, and observation is a big, big part of our Montessori journey as parents, as guides, and so forth. And in the assistance infancy, we have to do 250 hours of observation. And one of the observation that we can do if we are able to is to observe a birth. And I was very, very lucky during my training to be invited by a friend of mine who was having a home birth for her second child. And so she had asked me to come and care for her older child, who was a 4-year-old, who was there in the house, seeing her mother give birth to her sister. And it was just such a awakening for me of just how beautiful, natural, physiological, undisturbed, peaceful birth can be. I had had two births in hospitals, very different atmosphere, even though, there was a hospital in France and hospital here in San Diego, again, very different experiences. But just the fact that, oh my gosh, birth is such a natural, beautiful thing if we are prepared for it. And so that's where I've been really focusing on, is really helping parents focus on preparing not only for the birth, but really preparing for the rest of their life as parents. Because yes, the birth is an amazing event, but then there's the rest of our lives with our children, right? Um, so for one, I do want to share a quote from Dr. Montanaro, and she wrote actually Understanding the Human Being, which is a book that is used in our assistance to infancy training. Just a wonderful book, very small book, but that just takes us through the need of the infant, right? And so she says we should not look at newborn infants as small, helpless human beings, but as persons who are small in size, but with an immense mental capacity and many physical ability that cannot be witnessed unless the environment assists in the expression of life. And so here we are again, right? This idea of the environment, which we focus so much on in Montessori, of adapting our environment for the children. And so for me, with birth and prenatal, that is also their first environment, right? So during prenatal, during pregnancy, it's being aware of the environment that we are in, the mental environment, the physical environment, caring for ourselves well, because we are the first environment for that child. And so being very attentive to that, right? Of caring for ourselves and making sure that we are doing things that bring joy, and that the stress level that we have affects our baby as well. So I know that it's easier said than done most of the time, but if we can be aware of how important that whole development is. And, in my course, we go over what is going on prenatally, which is just amazing, right? When the senses come online, when their first movements, all of that. And so when we share that with parents, they get really excited and they get really in tune with what's going on. And then there is the birth environment, which is really crucial for a healthy birth. And so there are many, many choices that we have today. I think, unfortunately, in our day and age, we have come to think that birth only happens in hospitals, which for a very, very, very long time, it did not. It happened in homes, or it happened in birth centers and so forth, or out in nature and such. But with modern technology, it has become more medicalized, and unfortunately I feel that we have kind of disconnected ourselves from this transition of life and this kind of physical transition that we go through as parents. And so it's really important to just remember that you do have choices. So for anybody who, is on the call that might be expecting soon or is thinking about it, just inform yourself. Know what is available in your community, right? Those of us on the call who work with parents, who are expecting, or who are thinking about it, is really important to educate them as to what is available in the community. And this can be what we call free birth, which is some families choose to leave me alone. I want to do this by myself, right? There is home birth, where a certified nurse midwife attends the birth. They are highly qualified. They have, medical training and so forth, and they come to your home and help you birth at home. There are freestanding birth centers that are attended by midwives. There are birth centers within hospitals. I also volunteer here in one of our local hospitals that has a birth center and a labor and delivery unit. And then there's the labor and delivery, which is your kind of most common hospital environment to have a baby. And this can be attended by a midwife or a doctor, which would be an OBGYN. And so just knowing that you have options, I think is very important. And then really thinking of what is your dream scenario? What have you been told about birth, right? Because we see things about birth in the media. We're told stories about our own birth. And it's important to kind of process that. And what have you been told? What might you be looking forward to? You might be afraid of, so that we can really tune in and know more about it. Because again, the information and the knowledge is going to dissipate the fear of birth. And when we know that fear is going to work against the birth, because when we're fearful, we tend to tense up, and birth is really about letting go and surrendering and relaxing, so this human can come out of our bodies. So very important. And then the other thing is to, because you're informing yourself, and when I say informing yourself, I wouldn't, overdo it, because there's some scary things out there, and you might not want to know everything, because that's just going to bring out more stress. But know what is going on in your body. Like, it's more about the information of what is the birth process? What is the physical birth process? What is your body going to go through, what to expect, what to be attentive to? And then with that is to create a sort of birth plan, right? To have an idea of how you would like things to go. Knowing, and this is something very important that, I tell the parents that I work with, a birth plan is just a plan, right? We never know what might happen. We never know what baby might decide, or if there's, is a medical emergency that comes up. We need to be okay with letting go of that plan, right? But it is important to have kind of your ideal situation written down and sharing it with whoever is going to be attending the birth. And then the other thing is to have a birth team. Yes, some women do birth completely alone, and I think it's amazing. But I also know that having a team around you that is going to support you is extremely important. So a birth doula, which is what I do, is part of that team. It is also maybe your parenting partner. It might be a best friend, or your mother or mother-in-law, whoever brings you safety, brings you comfort, that knows you and knows, what you're going to need. And then on top of that is the professional people around, right? So a birth doula such as myself, but it could be also a lactation consultant, a pelvic floor therapist, a maternal mental health therapist, whatever it is that you need to feel really supported for your birth. And then that being said, there is also afterbirth. What happens after birth, right? And there is, Dr. Montanero talks a lot about this, is the importance of those 8 weeks after birth, which we call the symbiosis period. And this is really a period where we're going to recuperate from the birth. So, both mommy and baby are going to recuperate. They're going to bond, get to know each other, right? That whole skin to skin, initiating breastfeeding, if that is what the mother wants to do, all of that. Those are very important, delicate moments that need to just have time, and to be that we don't rush, that we let mother and baby bond and really protect that, right? Which is one of the roles of the birthing partner, is once baby is theirs, to really protect that mother baby dyad during the symbiosis period, to I always say like to the dads that I work with is like, you're going to be the protector of this, bonding that's so, so important for both mother and baby. You're going to establish certain routines with your infant as well so that you have that bonding, but you need to protect it. So if you have, visitors that want to come, if mom is not ready, that's okay. You can say, we'll send you some photos, you can drop off some meals, you can fold some laundry, do other things, but right now mom and baby are bonding, and to really protect that. In some cultures, um newborns aren't presented to the world until a month or 40 days later. So I think, in our kind of Western culture where we want to, get up and go and go show the baby to, but remember that, the birthing person and the baby need to recuperate from this pretty intense experience that they just went through together. Um, so that's pregnancy, birth, symbiosis. I would say, again, with the Montessori lens, observation is key here. Once baby is here, is really to learn to observe your baby, to just, and I remember, I mean, I remember when I first had my child, I was in such awe that, I had this child. I was just like, oh, just watching her all the time. And you learn to observe and see their, their hand movements and when they develop. And that's how I think as parents, if we are observing from the beginning, we're able to kind of always be a little bit a step ahead and know what to present later on, know what they might need, read their cues and such. And that is observation. And I think we did a talk on observation a while back here on this conference of just how important it is. So that's really, and then again, there's the during pregnancy is all the activities that you can be doing while you're nesting, preparing some of the mobiles, preparing the tamponcino that we like to use, preparing the environment, which is so important, that we know in Montessori, and preparing that newborn environment for their development, right? For their natural development, maybe using a floor bed and having the mobiles and art down at their level and so forth. And that is really important. And I'm not going to go into all of that because I know we've talked many times about all of that, but just that is all part of preparation, right? And to just be aware of what the needs of the child are going to be once they are earthside, I think is very important, as well as having conversation with your parenting partners as to what are your values, how do you want to show up for this child, what are things that maybe you enjoyed during your childhood, maybe you didn't enjoy, what you want to repeat, what you don't want to repeat. I think those are important conversations to be had as well. And it's fascinating to me how pregnant parents are really in this sensitive period where they're just really focused on the birth and they're not thinking ahead. And I think that is our role as, educators, is to maybe start planting seeds of things to kind of plan for, which is very important. And then I will just leave with also the idea that if you are, a Montessori educator, birth to 3, and you're interested in helping parents during pregnancy and before birth, is this whole idea of the art of childbirth. So in our Montessori training, they use the term rat. I've just changed the the letters so that I can say art. And it is the autogenic respiratory training that actually Dr. Montanaro taught, and it's really about helping the birthing person be in a very relaxed state. It is a state of almost deep sleep, but you are aware of what is going on. And we do kind of a training with the parents to be able to self relax and to stay in a state of total relaxation, even when your uterus is contracting and you're having very strong sensations. So that is also something that I do. And in that, I add all of the different kind of Montessori principles along the way, right? About the role of the environment, about language development, movement development, the role of the father, and so on and so forth. So I think that's about all I kind of wanted to share. And you know, I'm open to any questions about all of that or anything other than that. So yes, thank you.
Perfect. I just looked at the topic, which said becoming a Montessori parent from pregnancy to toddlerhood.
Yes.
And my first question would be, what common challenges do new parents face when transitioning to a Montessori parenting approach and how they can overcome them? You know, like what surprises us? The baby is born, it's a big surprise, actually, like every minute is something surprising. But then when we want to do it in a Montessori way, what are some of the challenges that people face and yeah, how we can overcome them?
Uh, that's a great question. And I think for me, what comes to mind is not necessarily having control of the situation, right? I think as and I think that goes for parenting in general, not even you know, quote unquote Montessori. It's just your life is, you know, put on its head because you have been in control of your schedule. You go to sleep when you want to sleep, you eat when you want to sleep, and so forth. And suddenly you have this human being that is 100% dependent on you. And for those who choose to breastfeed, for example, then, you know, even more so, like they are also the supplier of food. So that's why to me it's so important to have a team around to really support the mother, what I say, mothering the mother, right? To be able to let her rest as much as she can so that she can rest and feed and be fed and be taken care of, but so she can care of her infant. But as it progressed, I think it's is the challenge to me is that in our modern day society, I think we feel that we need to entertain our children constantly. And I think the mindset that about, you know, Montessori parenting is that the child is highly intelligent, that they are discovering things on their own, right? And it's more about how can we support that? How can we nurture that? How can we protect that? So to me, it's really about protecting their concentration from day one, right? To be able to just observe and let them discover things, you know, when they start looking at their hands around, you know, 3, 4 months or trying to grab things, like let them be, let them struggle to go reach for something, right? We don't need to do things for them. And I think that that is, for me, the biggest thing for when parents, you know, want to do more Montessori parenting, or even when they put their children in Montessori schools, I see like the disconnect with the children in the classroom who are so independent and doing all of these things for themselves, getting themselves dressed, preparing their food, cleaning up, putting things away. And then, you know, parents arrive or, you know, nannies arrive and they do everything for them. And the child gets very frustrated and very annoyed. Like, what, how disrespectful. I can do this, right? So it's that understanding of these little humans are highly intelligent. Like, follow them. Like, really, when Montessori says follow the child, she really means it. Like, follow, observe, and follow their needs. Be observant so that you can prepare maybe activities, or you can plan ahead. Like, oh my gosh, my child is really interested in helping me cook. I need to get some good tools and make sure that I plan part of the recipe they can do. And that can be, just washing a potato. It doesn't have to be elaborate at the beginning, but to me, it's this idea of involving children in our lives as opposed to wanting to like put them to the side and make sure they're entertained. And today, and this is a whole other a whole other topic, but please don't put digital devices in their hands to entertain them. Like, no, bring them in, give them some dishes to wash, or some gardening tools, or things like that. And even as infants, like, let them be on the floor and go struggle to get that toy and such. Don't put them in containers or in exercisers where they're not free to move on their own. So I think that's really the, I wouldn't say it's struggle, but it's a mindset of being very respectful of what this little human being is going through, and that they need our support to get there.
We have 3 or 4 questions that
Okay.
are somehow similar. And the question almost always is how you can give this extra time that the newborn needs at the same time when your toddler needs your one-on-one time as well, and also how you help them together, adjust to each other and meet each other, and yeah.
Right, right. Beautiful question, and so, so important, right? Because, and this is also going to depend on the age of your firstborn, because, between a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, there is a big difference in just developmental, in what they can understand and so forth, because the 2-year-old is still in a very kind of unconscious, absorbent mind. The 4-year-old can start to reason and so forth. What I would say is, for one, this is also part of your team, right? To make sure that, first of all, the priority is the well-being of the mother, so that you are able to recuperate. So this is maybe a friend, a grandparent, other than just the other parent, right? Somebody else that can maybe help with the older child a bit more. But when they're both awake and you're there, the for me, the important thing is to involve the older child as much as possible, right? To really say, oh my gosh, your baby brother or your baby sister is crying. I don't know what they need. What do you think they need? Do you think they need for me to feed them? Oh, let's go could you go get me a burp cloth? Or maybe they need to be changed. Would you mind could you get a diaper for your baby sister or brother? Right? So that they have an ownership of the situation, so that they can, partake. There's some days where they're not going to be interested at all, and they'll say no or whatever, and that's fine, right? We don't want to impose it on them. But for me, it's really important to engage them. The other thing is to have like a tamponcino from the beginning, because I think that helps us to feel safe for the sibling, no matter how old they are, to be able to hold their newborn sibling if they are in their tamponcino, because it just feels a little bit more secure for them. And then is really, having them be part of as much as possible of the care of this newborn, and reminding them that they were once like that. Like, I remember when you were this small, and, they're not going to be this small. And when they get frustrated, to be attentive and to acknowledge it. It's like, oh yes, oh my goodness, I can see how annoying this crying can be, right? We're not used to this, but this is how babies communicate, and we just have to figure out what it is baby needs, right? So being very talking to them through it. The other thing that I will say, and this is something that I did, so this is a very personal thing, but it did wonders for me. When I had my second child, my daughter was 4 years old. Um, she, already had her own bedroom. She was sleeping on a floor bed. I, when I came home from the hospital with her newborn brother, I put her newborn brother in her bedroom from day one. And this was something that had been recommended by a pediatrician to my older sister. She had done it, and it actually did wonders. Like, they are extremely close. There was never any jealousy of any sort, right? Because we have to remember, like, the older sibling might already be in their own room, and then we bring a baby home and we keep them in our bedroom with us. And it's like, oh, that's so unfair, right? So, yes, it was a little bit more work for me those first few months where, I got up and I nursed in their room, and it was fine. She literally woke up the two first nights when her baby brother was crying and never woke up again. So it's just, again, it's about making it as natural a process as possible, and to, that they need to have that bond. And they ended up sharing a room until I think she went off to middle school. Like, oftentimes we were, I had said, would you like to, we had two rooms, and they, no, 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 we like being together. And, and to this day, they're, in their 20s, and they talk to each other very often and are very close. So yeah, hope that helps.
Thank you. From Amina. I like this question because it comes back to what you already said. How can I approach preparing for birth and the postpartum period with confidence when my experience of having a daughter felt so hard? I understand the steps, but it's difficult to implement everything, especially when those around me don't always prioritize the baby and mom. Is it okay if I don't follow every step exactly as you said?
Of course, you do what is good for you. Like, there is no, these are only suggestions and ideas and so forth. I think what is important is to tune in to you and what is going to nurture you and make you, feel confident in your parenting and in your birthing. And I will say, if you've had a prior experience that was not ideal, that you didn't like, and so forth, another birth is also an opportunity to kind of regain that, or have a redo, right? Because actually the home birth that I first attended was actually a girlfriend. This was her second birth. Her first birth had been traumatic. It had been a hospital birth. It didn't go at all the way she had anticipated. She was just, it was really a sad story. And her and baby were fine, but it was just more, interventions than necessary and so forth. And so she really had to work on herself and process that. So sometimes it is seeking professional, help, and seeing a maternal mental health therapist and talking through that, and that's okay. Or talking it through with other friends that understand and who who acknowledge what you want and will support you in what you want. But you get to choose a second time, right? You don't have to repeat the same thing. So think about what it is that you really want, what you're really striving for, knowing, like I said, birth plans are only plans. If something, suddenly you have high blood pressure, or baby's heart is whatever, those are things that could happen. Very rare, but we always have that little parentheses, but plan it. And to me, like, really work on visualizing what it is that you want. Really, we have that power of calling in what it is that we want. And we are mighty powerful when we are pregnant, when we give birth. Pregnancy is not an illness. It's a wonderful, amazing time in our lives that we get to own, and we choose how we want to go through it. And if there are, at the hospitals if you are in a hospital, for example, and they want to suggest an intervention or whatever, tune into your intuition, like tune in to, is this really necessary? And I actually I teach the acronym of BRAIN. So BRAIN: benefits, risk, alternatives, intuition, what if we do nothing, right? So that you're asking your provider all of these things so that you can make an intelligent decision for yourself and your baby. So you are mighty powerful, and you get to choose. So I hope that helps.
Perfect. Uh, Two questions here were about birth and about, if the birth didn't go as planned, what about the second birth? I will read both of them, but I think, we can talk about the topic a little more in general. How feasible is vaginal birth after two cesarean sections? I feel like the first cesarean could have been avoided and may have been unnecessary, while the second one was an emergency. 2+ years later, we are expecting number three, and I'm just wondering how much natural or Montessori based it can still be. And the second question from Kitty: how much does birth trauma affect the infant? Unfortunately, my home birth didn't go to plan, and I had a C section under general anesthetics. My baby didn't meet me till the next day, didn't get skin to skin, didn't eat for hours. I'm planning a rebirth, but I'm worried about her nervous system and potential issues for the future.
Okay, so great questions, and to both of you, I am deeply sorry that you experienced that during your first births, and I know that birth stories are important to process. So I would definitely, seek somebody who understands birth and who can help you process any, unnecessary baggage that you're still carrying from those traumas. So unfortunately, today I will say that the percentage of birth, born through cesarean or belly births, as we like to say, or airlifted, as some people say, are on the rise. And that is due to the fact that we intervene with birth, right? We get in the way of birth. We want it to go faster. We wanted to, analyze it so much and check on it and so forth, that it does get in the way, which is why we're seeing rise in cesarean. But to answer the first question, so a vaginal birth after cesarean, which the acronym is called VBAC, is more and more common. And so here I would really work with your provider. So whether it is a certified nurse midwife, and that's probably who I would tend to want to work with, or an OB who is who has experience with VBAC, because most doctors will say, I'm not sure it's very safe. Because what we have to understand with a cesarean is that it is a pretty extensive surgical intervention, right? They're cutting through many layers, and they have scarred the actual uterus, the uterus itself, so that the fear is when you are having a vaginal birth, if you push too much, or that the scar might undo itself. So that is a very, it's a risk. It's pretty rare, but it can happen. And so some doctors don't even want to take the chance, and will say, oh, no, 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 if you've had a cesarean, we have to do another one. But we also know that multiple cesareans, there's can also be a risk too, because we are doing surgery on another surgery on another surgery. So my advice for the person who asked about how feasible it is to have a vaginal birth after two cesareans is really finding the provider that you feel safe with and comfortable, and that can reassure you that that is doable and that they're willing to work with you. I have seen it done. It is possible. I'm actually working with a client right now who had a cesarean 10 years ago. She's having a second child, and that's what we're going to work for, is to have a unmedicated vaginal birth after this cesarean. So that would be my question to that. The other one was about how the birth experience affected the infant. Well, yeah, it definitely, there was definitely a disconnect. You didn't get to have that skin to skin, but it's okay. Like, don't, uh, there's no guilt to be had. Like, you have plenty of time to have skin to skin now. When I've had, clients who have gone into the operating room for cesarean, I have the dads do skin to skin right away, right? When mom is still recovering, like baby gets to have that warmth, human skin from their other parent. Or if another parent is not there, another loving human can do that for them. And then it's really about processing it together, telling stories and saying, I was sad not to be able to be there for you, but these things happen, and you're still, and I'm sure you're a wonderful mother, and so I think we, unfortunately, with these traumatic events, we always think that it's our fault, and we carry that with us. And I just want to acknowledge that it's not your fault, and that you did nothing wrong, and that you give all the love and comfort you can to your children today, in the moment.
One personal question from Nabila. Um, would you share how did you soothe both the newborn and the older sibling when they are having tantrum in the same room? Thank you for sharing your early parenting experiences.
um So you're asking me to go back a long time, right? Because like I said, they're 28 and 24. And to be perfectly honest, I don't ever remember that happening. Um, I think that when I had a newborn that was crying, I had um, and I will say, I have to be honest, my daughter was so ready to be an older sister. Like, it was her baby. Like, it was, it was like, I'll take care of it kind of thing. And just, just wonderful helper. And I think, that is really the important thing, is to make them helpers from the very beginning. Like, I really need your help. Um, so let's say that there is a situation where I have a baby who needs me, who's crying. So I would not use the word tantrum for an infant. Crying is just their way of communicating. It's not a tantrum. And a maybe a 2-year old who is having a difficult moment. Um, I would try to sit down next to them and to try to hold, to have them both close to me and just pour my calm and my breathing and just, try to physically hug them and or just sit next to the older one who is having a difficult moment and really try to acknowledge it. But here again, if it's too much on your nervous system, I think it's very important that you tend to yourself first, and that if it's too much, like, if there is another person in the home, say, would you mind taking baby right now? I need to care for my older or vice versa. I would tend to want to give the newborn away unless I need to feed it, but to let it be soothed by somebody else so that I can tend to the older one. But if that's not possible, it would be, having going and for me, it's always going outside, nature, holding them. So, put the baby in a carrier and go outside, go, get some of that energy out, or get in a bath together, or do things that are going to soothe everybody. But most importantly is about taking care of your nervous system first, right? So if you're not able to handle all of that, make sure to ask for help or to step away and, go splash some cold water in your face, do what you need to do, get a drink of water and return to the situation. As long as they are safe, we don't need to solve everything in the moment. And sometimes, children just need to process and you just acknowledge like, oh, you're having a hard time and I'm here if you need a hug. And sometimes that's all we can do. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Through a question from Ayushi. I'm a mom of 2-year twins, boy and a girl, and we live in Delhi, India. I juggle a lot to plan activities and keep them engaged in a lot of activities as in Montessori guidelines, as I'm working from home. Can you guide about how we can invest little time and still adopt full authentic Montessori practice?
So, wonderful question. And I will say, like, you say you're doing a lot. I don't want it to be a burden on you, right? I don't want it to feel like it's too much or you're running on empty. And twins I know is a lot. Like having two-year olds, 1 2-year old is a lot, so two of them it can be a lot. But this is, for me, the Montessori principle at home is really about the fact that they can do things independently. So it's really about you stepping out of the situation, right? It's really about setting up the environment so that they can go prepare a snack on their own, go tend to a plant, go do a puzzle, read a book, do things that they want to do on their own. So it's more about setting up the environment and the activities. And I wouldn't do too many. I would minimize it, right? Because when there's too much, it's almost overwhelming for them because there's too many choices and it's too much for their decision making. So minimize it, observe what it is that they tend to always want to be doing, what they're always going back to. And that's what you put out. That's what maybe put one or two different activity that relates to whatever they're interested in at the time, and be okay with not having to be there with them all the time. Like, be okay with feeling safe that you have set up an environment where you can turn your back on them and they're going to be okay, right? So that you can do your work in parallel and you let them know, I'm working, you do your work, and I'm doing my work. And that to me is the real kind of, Montessori home when we are all at home. It's really about we're not there to be their servants. We're not there to teach them constantly. We're there to guide them. We're there to empower them to do things on their own. So it's really about setting up that environment for them so that you can be okay being, in another corner of the room reading or, working or whatever you need to be doing, or knitting or sewing or, whatever it is, so that we can all say we're all doing our work. We're all keeping ourselves busy and mastering a skill that we want to be mastering.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question, and I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Um, Question is from Anna, and it says, how can Montessori be introduced to a 7-year-old child who has experienced adverse childhood experiences? What benefits does Montessori provide to children who have experienced adverse childhood experiences?
So I'll be perfectly honest. I don't know, much about this specific situation, and it would be
Right to answer.
I would need to know more and maybe observe and so forth. But to me, the beauty of Montessori and what I believe, is for every child. I've always said that, Montessori is for every child. It's not for every parent, because again, there's this relationship that we think that we need to have with our children, that we need to be doing things for them and so forth. And Montessori kind of takes that away from us in a way. Like, we're setting up the environment and we're letting the child do what they need to be doing, and they're going to do it differently than us, and we need to be okay with that. So for this 7-year-old who my heart breaks to know that they've had such a hard time so early on in life, would be to really minimize the environment, to really be looking at what they want to be mastering. So, at that age, it could be more geography, or interest in a certain historical moment, or maybe music, or more fine motor of knitting or crocheting or sewing, something that is going to give them and feed their self-esteem and their confidence to be able to do things for themselves. So again, it's going to be that idea of having an environment that is appropriate to what interests them, what is, and 7, is that early elementary, which I'm not a big connoisseur of, but I know it's about working on kind of bigger projects. So whether it's, building a diorama to explain a historical moment, or geography or things like that, to just help them get into, again, something that they value, that they are going to be able to build on their own confidence to have that. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks,
You're
Jeanne,
very
for
welcome.
being here.
You're very welcome. And just as a conclusion for me, all of this is really about, it's just being aware of your options, because again, here we're all interested in Montessori, but it's not for everybody, and there's options for everybody. It's about tuning in to your joy, and tuning into what your child needs. And I get to see this beautiful little one on my screen. These wonderful parents with a little one there. So wonderful. So thank you so much for everyone for being here. Thank you, Lucy, for this amazing conference. And I look forward to listening to everybody all this week. So thank you.
Perfect. Thanks to everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jeanne. Thank you.
You're welcome.